Okay, this is an introduction to Western notation using a staff system. I won't get into the origins of this, but basically we have a graph. If we use the acoustical terms, up and down, or the vertical axis indicates frequency, and the horizontal axis indicates time, or pitch in musical terms, and rhythm in the musical terms, left to right. 5 lines, 4 spaces. Each line and space indicates a different note, but at the moment we don't know which lines or which notes correspond to which. So to do that, we need a clef. And a clef is a symbol that appears at the beginning of the staff and tells us, gives us a relative position by telling us where a particular note is, and we can generate the rest of the notes from there. So 2 common clefs in use still today. There are others and many other older ones, but we'll concentrate on these 2. The treble clef, or also known as the G clef, which is good to know because it gives us some crucial information. Long ago, this symbol here looked much more like a G, and over the years became more and more stylized, and now we're left with this. But what we have left here is this curl at the bottom that encircles the line, and the G clef tells us which line is G, and from there we can figure out all the other notes. The Western alphabet has 7 letters, A through G, and then they repeat as we continue going up or down from there. So from G we can figure out down, F, E, going backwards, or going up, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. And yeah, so once we have that, we know where everything else is. And a couple mnemonic devices for remembering these. Popular one is the spaces spell the word face. I haven't come up with any others because that one's so easy. I haven't come across any others. So that spells face. The spaces F, A, C, E, and a number of mnemonic devices for the lines. The one many people grew up with, every good boy deserves fudge. A few I've heard more recently that I like. Even George Bush deserves fudge, E, G, B, D, F. Not that he does. And this one, Elvis's guitar broke down Friday. So you can pick any you want. There's a few online, or you can make up your own. The ruder they are, the easier they are to remember, but I won't provide any of those. So there's the treble clef. The other common clef is called the bass clef, or the F clef. And again, good to know this is F because it gives us the crucial relative information. So again, long ago this symbol looked like an F. The 2 dots are what is left of the 2 stems coming out of the side of the F. And this little curl at the beginning indicates the note F on this line, and the 2 dots enclose the line that is F. So again, the F clef tells us where the F is, and from there we can figure out all the other notes again, going up from F, G, A, or going backwards F, E, D, C, B, A, G. To remember the spaces, unfortunately it doesn't spell a word, but we have all cows eat grass, or all cars eat gas. Again, make up your own if you wish. And this one for the lines, which I quite like, George Bush didn't find anything. G, B, D, F, A. So that's treble and bass clef, and that's what we're going to deal with in these lectures. Couple other little things that might help. You notice the bottom space and the top line are the same note, and they're an octave apart, or the bottom line and the top space are the same note. Same on the bass clef, of course. G, G, or A, A. Bottom line, top space, bottom space, top line. Probably some other tricks. One thing I used to do, and other people have done, which I don't recommend, is if you look at the relationship of these 2 clefs, you'll see that the G here is on the bottom line, and the G here is on the second line from the bottom. So what I used to do is sort of imagine a note, or what we call a third above or on the next line or space. Here G, I could do 3. Imagine that note for a second, and then name this one that note G. That's not a very efficient way to read music. You want to be reading as efficiently as possible, but of course the best thing is to just get these instinctual so that you don't need to think about them. And that comes through reading a lot. So a couple other things we can do with this. Neither of these clefs cover a huge range. They're quite good for a singer or some instruments, but the piano or a choir or the orchestra have a much greater range than a single staff can show. And so there's two ways we can deal with that. One is through the use of ledger lines. And basically ledger lines just extend the graph or the staff higher or lower as we need it. Earlier systems had 7 or 8 or 9 lines and 8 spaces, but it gets hard to figure out what line or space is in the middle with that many lines. So with ledger lines we just have a little dash, a little longer than the note head filled in, and that just kind of extends the staff. And we can just, well, the important thing is to make sure they're spaced the same as the staff if you're doing it by hand. And again, you can figure these out simply by, here's our G from the G clef. There it is encircling the G. And we go down G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G. And we can keep going down, but at some point it becomes very difficult to read. 4 lines is pretty safe for most intermediate or advanced musicians. Beyond that, a little tricky to read. And we can do the same thing above. Here's our G, the space above the clef. And I'll start with E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. 4 lines probably safe too up there. There are other things we can do when we want to get higher, but we won't touch on those. So that's one way to deal with a greater range of pitches. The other way to deal with it is by using what's called the grand staff. And the grand staff is a pair of staves, and together they make a system. So a collection of staves grouped together. Basically, we're meant to play them. They're meant to sound together in time. So we call them a system. They sound together, but each one's an individual staff. So here we have the treble clef and the bass clef, or the treble staff and the bass staff. And we'll look at how they're related to each other and how we can use this to extend the range of any clef. So, main thing here, one line below the treble staff is called middle C, and one line above the bass clef is also called middle C. These are the same pitch, and the way you find middle C on the piano, just to give you a reference point, sit in the middle of the piano, and usually, I think almost always, where the name of the piano is right above the middle C, but also 2 black keys, and directly to the left, the C. This key is middle C. And so here I've put ledger lines, and I'll show you how the two map onto each other. We'll see that this F can also be indicated on the bass clef, and vice versa. This F above the bass clef is the same as the bottom F on the treble clef, and if I just do this, that should make it more clear. Now, and so we basically, if we extended that one middle line, we'd have a 11-line staff, very difficult to read, but instead we can see where they match up. And with a few ledger lines below the bass clef, a few above the treble clef, and we cover most of the range of the piano and much of the range of the orchestra and singing groups, chorales. Typically, the male bass voices are pitched around here in the bottom half of the bass clef, tenors here in the top half of the bass clef, female altos the bottom of the bass treble clef, and sopranos up here on the top. So it's nicely spaced for that as well. And piano music, this will often be the left hand on the bass clef and right hand on the treble clef. And just to get an idea how this maps to the piano, what happened there? Here I just mapped it. Here's middle C, and as we go up, we're just indicating white notes. We're not going to deal with the black notes yet. The white notes are called the natural notes. They don't have any tuning adjustments, which we'll talk about later. And I think that wraps up this portion.